that wasn't happening. So I just put my back against the wall and tried to take care of myself. But I never lost consciousness. The only time actually I did lose consciousness is when, and I still to this day don't know how they got me over that wall. I have no idea. But other than that, probably 5 minutes that they got me over the wall, I never lost consciousness.
OutKick 360 rolls on across the OutKick network. The best line I saw was from Eric Edholm at NFL.com, where he said, the legend of Brock Purdy grows, and he added, one day, Tom Brady will tell his grandkids that he once played against Brock Purdy in San Francisco, which is a really funny way to look at it, where Brady, I think there were 13 or 14 players on the 49ers roster that were like under the age of 4 or something. I think that was the stat I saw whenever Brady entered the league.
Well, in all honesty, though, if he does go on to a great career, then it's going to be a great trivia question one day. Who did Brock Purdy defeat in his first start in the NFL?
Yeah, you're right, yeah.
And it would be 45-year-old Tom Brady. Yeah. Because years from now, we're going to look at that and say, those guys played in the same time? Connecting the dots is going to be so hard to do because you're going to say, those guys actually played in the same year? It's weird to think about that when Brock Purdy's out there tossing beautiful spirals for touchdowns in 2042.
So that Brady ties into the fine levied from the NFL for faking an injury in the game against the Saints. Brady was on the field, appeared to stay, like the offense was staying on the field for a fourth down play, or was at least out there. Cam Jordan fined $500,000, along with Saints head coach Dennis Allen, who was fined $100,000. The Saints organization fined $350,000, and some of the assistant coaches were also levied fines of around $50,000. Jordan tweeted out the details. I don't think this was out there until Cam Jordan put this out there for everyone to see. And what's interesting about this story is the Saints claim that everything was on the up and up, and that he he had a foot sprain. They didn't know that at the time. They taped him up. He re-entered the game, and then the following day he underwent an MRI to diagnose exactly what this was. But the way the play sets up is he tackles Brady and gets right back up. And he takes a few steps, and he's walking back, and he's kind of going towards the sideline, and then he takes a knee and is like pointing at his foot, his leg. And at the time, Brady, it was also 16-3. Of course, the Bucs go on to win anyway. But Brady was still kind of out there on the field as if the Bucs were going to go for it on fourth down. They end up punting. And that was the contention of Cam Jordan was, hey, like, you're finding me $500,000 for faking an injury when the result of the play was they punted. That's the interesting part, and I'm kind of it's confusing here.
I'm very confused because there was no real gain for him to do that. This is not a big problem in the NFL. I would understand if I watched games and thought, man, there's a lot of guys out here faking injuries. It's an enormous problem in college.
Yes.
Ask anyone who runs a fast-paced offense when they get going and guys take a dive. I saw Lane Kiffin, of all people, retweet this story with the eyeball emoji, because he was mad this year that someone was doing it against him. Well, Lane Kiffin was the chief violator a year ago in Knoxville also, and he utilized the rules or the lack thereof to his advantage in that game by faking a ton of injuries, especially in the second half of that game. That led Josh Heupel to have to answer questions all offseason about teams faking injuries against him, and it was chiefly Lane Kiffin and Ole Miss that did that against Heupel. But Hutton, you brought up a good point in the last break. That went away for the most part this year.
I think it did.
It wasn't nearly as big of a problem across college football. It happened.
It was more.
I saw it at times where the boos would start by the home crowd because someone would take a dive,
but not
as
nearly
as a team got going.
I don't
but not
recall.
As much.
I don't recall Kiffin doing it like as nearly as frequently as what we've seen. Not even Tennessee. Let's go back to in the stadium in Tuscaloosa as Ole Miss played Alabama, and Bama fans will boo anything, but any time that they were Bryce Young's trying to hurry up the offense last year, this is 2021, you could see an injury, and there were boos galore from the Crimson Tide faithful thinking that they were doing this, and they were. I mean, the guys would re-enter the game. We see it. We still see it in the SEC, but Kiffin's reaction makes me think that there's some type of gentleman's agreement, and gentleman's stretch. It's a stretch. You know what I mean, though. And I said last year, I don't know how you police this. They're trying to get schools to somehow shy away from storming the field, and the fine's $100,000. Like, I don't know how you fine. Are you going to fine the player $500,000 because that's what they did here in the NFL? You're going to fine the university. You're going to fine the team. Like, I don't know how you end up levying the same fine unless you just say. And again, my theory is there was some type of come to Jesus meeting here.
Greg Sankey
got
probably
people together.
the SEC in the room and said, we got to stop this.
And said, hey, cool it.
You're making a mockery of the sport.
And for the most part, I don't recall seeing it nearly as often. And that's with watching the number one offense in America speed down the field. I didn't see the SEC teams taking dives nearly as much.
Yeah, the only way to penalize it in college is just to make a blanket rule that if the game is stopped for your injury, you have to sit out 2 or 3 plays or whatever.
There's no way you can. I don't know how you judge that in real time.
Well, again, this is not saying everyone's faking, but if you're actually injured and you had to stop the game and you couldn't get to the sideline, then you got to sit out 3 plays.
But if you're
just for everyone.
But if you're actually injured, I mean, I don't.
Well, if you're actually injured, you're not going to be in for 3 plays anyways. You're not going to go out and then come right back in 1 play later. If you had to stop the game for a cramp, for anything else, it's a 3-play penalty. You have to go to the sideline for 3 plays. There's an official there that marks you, and you don't go back in. Point being, you can't prove who's faking and who's not. So it just has to be a rule about an injured player.
Yeah.
So that would stop you maybe from some of your guys faking an injury if you know they got to go out for 3 plays. Can't do it all the time. But it was less of a problem in college football.
I didn't
even know it was a problem.
It wasn't really a topic this year.
Until this fine. That's what's so strange about this story. Weird move by the NFL.
And a quiet story, which is also strange. Headlines next on OutKick 360.
college football's in trouble. There's a lot of people trying to keep it from happening.
I think it's a general consensus across the college football landscape. We want to play football.
College football is a huge part of the fall. It's a huge part of Americana itself.
It just really felt like people in the country needed college football to just feel a little sense of normal.
Big news from the Big Ten as the conference releasing its 10-game football schedule.
We go home thinking there's going to be practice the next day. Everybody gets a text, stay home, everything's canceled.
Big Ten fall football season has been canceled.
We just believe collectively there's too much uncertainty.
I guess what I'm trying to understand, though, Kevin, is that was the same position you had 6 days ago.
The Big Ten is an unmitigated disaster.
There was a ton of confusion. There was presidents saying one thing, there was coaches saying another.
Players had to be silent, coaches had to be silent, ADs had to be silent.
People said, how does what you just did make any sense?
And nobody really knew what the heck happened when they voted to cancel the season.
You make this huge historical announcement, and then Kevin Warren never does a press conference to explain it. It was like a masterclass in how not to handle a crisis.
The word really that was lacking in all of this is transparency.
It felt like a lot of stuff was happening behind closed doors.
Even today, we still don't know what occurred.
So you don't tell us parents, that's fine, but you're not telling the young men that it affects.
We have to make a decision to save the season. What about the history books? What about the rivalry games? What about Paul Bunyan's axe? How is that not going to go to a team this year?
This is a failure of epic magnitude. The Big Ten presidents and leaders should be held accountable for the disastrous decisions that they're making.
Then the commissioner doubles down, saying his decision will not be revisited.
And that's the point. It felt like a war was declared on the Big Ten and Kevin Warren.
Everything turned political.
Because if this is medical, then you would have stopped the game of football a long time ago.
I think the Big Ten leaders will tell you that they probably made a mistake in hindsight.
If I had the chance to do it all over last year, I would make the same decisions that we made.
Glad you're with us. Coming up in 20 minutes, Michael McKenry, former MLB catcher and broadcaster currently. He'll join us to discuss the gobs of cash handed out, bags of cash across Major League Baseball. And we'll get reaction to him on some of the top
Guys
signings.
are getting paid.
Oh, yeah, they are. Also, we will
Braves
dive back
made a trade today,
to the NFL headlines. Yes.
For a guy of his position, so we'll ask him about him.
Yeah, we'll dive into that as well.
I didn't watch a lot of Oakland A's baseball this year, Hutton, so I'm not quite familiar with this young man.
No,
so I'll ask Michael McKenry about his playing prowess.
Yes, we'll dive into the Judge contract and more That's coming up in roughly 20 minutes. We updated this to begin the show, but Mississippi State University released a statement regarding the health status of head coach Mike Leach. They sent out confirmation that he is in critical condition at the hospital at the University of Mississippi Medical Center, and that they would provide further information on their social media account if and when necessary through the family. And that they said they appreciated the outpouring support, and that was it. It does not look good. Reports are of a heart attack, possible seizures. Reports are from the Clarion Ledger that he was possibly alone for 10 to 15 minutes while this was going on. Thoughts and well wishes to the family of Mike Leach, and of course to Coach, that anything that could possibly go right here does. And it does not look good just based on how everyone's reacting to this, Jeff.
Yeah, terrible story, and we wish the best. I just saw where Texas Tech posted a swing your sword, the old logo for the Pirate when he was coaching at Texas Tech, has it on their Jumbotron in their stadium, and Texas Tech with a message for Mike Leach, also his former employer. Is
the Ravenwood quarterback here in Middle Tennessee, Chris Parson, is that his name? I believe that's right. He's committed there. And I was told he's going to graduate early and go to Starkville. So I think there are plenty of people.
This is all in the next week
that are reaching
for signing day, for early signing day for everyone.
Yeah. It's it's just such a terrible story that we all saw yesterday.
So Zach Arnett, the defensive coordinator, they're not doing anything which would be insensitive to name like an interim. But there was something in there about sort of assuming some of the day-to-day operational stuff of the program to keep continuity going with everything going on with Mike Leach right now.
Troy Taylor's the new head coach at Stanford. He was one of 2 finalists, and the other one, I guess, Chad, you said, well, they found out, Jason Garrett found out he wasn't in the job, so he stepped away. And then Stanford waited, over the weekend, and then they're going with Sacramento State's Troy Taylor as the new head coach at Stanford. The only time
by the way, I've always wanted to interview for another job at some point and then realize I'm not going to get the other job, but be able to come back and just say, I've really decided to reaffirm my commitment to X job, and I'm here for the long haul, and I look forward to more assignments from NBC. I look forward to getting a bigger contract to cover Notre Dame football. I look forward to my Football Night in America assignment, because I really don't think if Jason Garrett's going to go down the rabbit hole of interviewing for a job like Stanford, he wanted to get back into coaching, but he got indications that Troy Taylor was going to be the choice and not him. So, I don't blame him for doing that. I probably would have orchestrated the same thing, but I think the idea of the recommitment to NBC just sort of makes me laugh, because I think that's from someone who wasn't getting the Stanford job. I don't think he turned down Stanford to stay at NBC to do Notre Dame football games. And he may get back into coaching a year from now or with another opportunity at some point, or he may be a broadcaster for the rest of his days. But I just don't buy that he took his name out of the running or turned down a job offer to stay at NBC.
The Black Knights of Army, they kicked a field goal with, just under 2 minutes to play to force overtime, the first overtime game in the history, the 123-year history of Army-Navy. And Army ends up winning. And the overtime allowed this game to hit the over for the first time since 2005.
Killed me. Davey had that stat for us last week about how many times the under hits. Texting my buddies about that over the weekend. I had Navy -2.5 and the under bigly. I mean bigly. And lost that. Once I went to overtime, I knew I was pretty much dead. I had a separate under bet. Then I think if it was going to be 3, if someone would have kicked a field goal in overtime, the under would have stuck. So that I was rooting for that in overtime also, and that didn't happen. Crazy though, the overtime rule was instituted in 1996 in college football. So that's still 26 years where we have not seen an overtime in the Army-Navy game, and these games always seemingly come down to a field goal. It is that close. They are tight every year. To not have an overtime until this one When Brad Nessler said that stat on Saturday during the broadcast, it made me do a double take. Great drama, terrific finish, not a lot of offense, as we expected over the course of this game. But then to watch both teams score on their first play in overtime, I'm thinking, what were you holding back all game?
Yeah, where was this?
They just got in there.
Where was this?
All right, now we got the plays to go score.
There have been 7 ties throughout the history of the rivalry.
Yeah.
The last one was 81. So, and that was years before overtime was instituted. But
who sings last if it's a tie? The big tradition of you sing the alma mater last if you win.
That's a great question.
Do you sing it in unison? Do they each face the cadets and the midshipmen and they sing together? It's just very confusing with both songs going.
Is it like a final face-off before a
flip a coin?
UFC fight or something where the stare down where they don't want to move? Dana White's trying to get them to move, and they just continue to stare, and then eventually someone flinches and turns around? And then you allow that person to sing last?
You just take a future either Delta Force or Army Ranger on the West Point team and then a future Navy SEAL on the Navy team, and they square off at midfield.
It may be
and then the winner of the fight gets to sing last
for the
battle,
team. American Gladiator
You elect your representative, we'll elect our representative, and we'll fight.
Maybe as simple as a coin toss as well, too.
I don't know if you watched it. The CBS Open to that was terrific.
It's always great, man.
There's not a lot of things that will get me emotional. And for whatever reason, watching these stories of these guys who go and risk it all and go to one of these academies and join the service and the sacrifice gets me every time. I watched it twice because I wanted to show it to my wife, Angie, also afterward. I think I cried both times with the families they brought in to New York to talk about their kid. And then they turn around in the videos on their child playing in this game, talking about what it means to play for their country and eventually fight for their country. Great work by CBS once again. Television production at its finest for that game. I love watching it every year. It's a rite of passage for the holiday season, and I thought they knocked it out of the park once again. Kudos to everyone involved.
What are they going to I was asked this by my brother-in-law, Alex. What's going to happen when the college football playoff factors into this? If one of them is eligible and they need to figure out who's in.
It won't. You're talking about to not go against Army Navy?
No, if they're one of them's eligible, if they're the highest ranked team.
That's a good question.
Or how do you schedule this game? Because they have this weekend,
honestly,
but you've got you have conference championship weekend.
I would be all for a provision.
Wait it out, but I don't know.
Here's my solution to this. If one of those teams is in that position, you don't even factor in the outcome of the Army-Navy game. They're in. They play the Army-Navy game, and a week later they play in a playoff, and that game doesn't matter to them. I'm all for a special inclusion to the United States Military Academy. Or it's never going to happen, first off. More than likely, it could, certainly. But I doubt that it will. But if that were to be the case, I'm all for them. You just grant them amnesty into the playoff if they're there the final week of the season. And that game against Army or Navy, whichever team is in that position, doesn't factor in to the committee or to the playoff ranking.
I'm fine with that, too. I'm just trying. I wonder what the rule would be. I don't know. I haven't even heard anything about this. It's a great question.
It is. That's a good question. I thought you were going to say, how do you avoid going head-to-head?
No.
But it's going to be the next Thursday, Friday, those games will start.
Yes.
But again, that's another one
right.
that
Thursday.
You've got these teams, if they were in a playoff,
they're playing Saturday.
It's a fun hypothetical to think about because they will have to play the next Saturday where everyone else gets that time off leading into the playoff, right?
I guess so. But
point is, they couldn't be put on a Thursday or Friday game. I think you'd have to put them in a Saturday game because it is said in the announcement about the playoff, they will start Thursday.
Yes.
There will be a playoff game Thursday, playoff game Friday, and then Saturday. They'll play it over the course of that weekend.
And the scheduling things too, like they're in Philly this year. Philly is, you've got to figure out how you're going to get the stadium scheduled and booked, and they do this years in advance. And, if you needed to move it, we need to reach out and try to figure this out because I'm fascinated by the troubleshooting that has to go on with this. There's another report from Brett McMurphy, and this is no surprise, but You've got the SEC that was saying that it's 2025 for Texas and Oklahoma. And that was coming from the Big 12 that was saying that. Like they're committed through 2025 or through 2024. And then you've got the 2025 season for the SEC. There's a report out from McMurphy that Texas and Oklahoma are looking to join early. The SEC is considering allowing them to join early and paying that fine, which is what $90 million each or something for Texas and Oklahoma to join a year early to break the grant of rights.
Get it done. I mean, that's a lot of money. It's easy for me to say.
But that goes into the college football playoff, which is going to start that year.
Yeah. I mean, we're going to say this, next year also, because we'll have the last year of the Final Four a year from now.
Mm-hmm.
Really wish that college football 12-team playoff could have started this year. We'll say the same thing next year.
Agreed.
Because it's going to be another.
Agreed.
This is what's great about the playoff happening, though. We're going to look at another great field of 12 teams and matchups a year from now and say, boy, wouldn't it be nice to have that 12-team playoff this year? But at least now we're only 2 years away.
Ken Niumatalolo out at Navy, by the way, to tie it back in there. We hit on that earlier. And, Chad, the Brock Purdy story, another part of that, his dad in the stands.
Yeah.
That was cool. You mentioned tearing up in the open. It made me think of his father in the moment yesterday as Brady and the Bucs fall 35-7 to the 49ers. Did you see postgame? Literally every player is going up to Brady.
Yeah.
For the San Francisco.
Which is pretty cool also when, you consider, of course, he's from there.
Right, yeah. And that's
also I'm thinking, what's the team that we talked about as a possibility for Brady? A homecoming next year? If that lined up?
Yeah. But, I mean.
Maybe I'm the only one thinking about that. I'm like, hey, you could be talking to your future teammate and quarterback. Now, I'm also watching that game yesterday and watching Brady, look like he's in his mid-40s in that game and watching Brock Purdy and thinking, I don't know if they're going to want Brady a year from now.
Yeah, the talent level from Tampa compared to San Francisco was evident. By the way, we're going to get into NFL injuries later this hour, but Deebo Samuel went off in that game while we were on the air yesterday here locally doing our NFL postgame show. And, Chad, it looked bad. It turns out it's not as bad as it could be. He could be back as early as it appears to be a high ankle sprain.
No.
So back as early as the playoffs for Deebo Samuel.
I would say high ankle sprain earliest would be the first round of the playoffs. That's one that he's not going to play until playoff games. But you're right in that's way more hopeful than done for the season, that he could possibly get back if, in fact, that's what it is.
And for all the discussion about Purdy and the offense and the 35 points, because they put on a show, the San Francisco defense, adding in the 7 points, and I hit on this in one big thing last week, they've allowed 64 total points in their 6-game win streak now. That is elite. And that was also a tie-in for Purdy because he's practicing against that group every week, that first-string defense as the scout team quarterback, because with Garoppolo and early in the season with Trey Lance, it was Purdy that was getting those reps against the defense. So I'm sure it helped him, but he's confident, man. He is
some moxie about him.
Yeah, he's extremely comfortable within that offense, and that there's something to the Shanahan style that fits a lot of these quarterbacks and what they do best. Now, it has not translated for Trey Lance, but whenever Trey Lance was drafted, it didn't matter if it was Trey Lance or Mac Jones. If he was going to be paired with Kyle Shanahan, this guy's going to be successful.
Well, and I also think it's a little unfair to say it hasn't worked for Trey Lance just simply because of his injury situation. Did not look good in the snapshots that we saw with Trey Lance, but that's also not to say that Shanahan's not good enough to start getting an increasing return on investment with him.
Not just snapshots, though. It's reports out of San Francisco that all offseason he was put in position to be a leader, and he was, and then training camp rolled around and preseason games rolled around, and it did not look good. And they're going, man, is this guy the guy? Even when Peter King was out there, he's asking those questions as he made his tour. And then we saw Chicago, albeit Justin Fields was also awful then. He turned into
pretty good player.
Playmaker for Chicago's offense. Coming up, we've got Michael McKenry, some pretty good players making elite money, the best money with these contracts in Major League Baseball. Teams handing out bags of cash to stars, superstars, and honestly, some role players. We'll get Michael McKenry's take on who got the best bang for their buck at the winter meetings where there was a ton of movement across MLB. That's next on OutKick 360.
Today's edition of the Trey Wallace Podcast. Happy to be joined by Barrett Salee. Everything is powered by OutKick.com. Barrett Salee of CBS Sports joins us. What's up, buddy?
Oh, just getting through transfer portal palooza, bowl games. It's funny, Trey. I don't know if you feel this way, but I've noticed this for a while now. The offseason in college football is so much crazier because there's no structure to it. Like there's not like a pattern like there is during game week. I mean, it's been crazy the last couple of days.
It hasn't stopped, and that's the wild part about it. I mean, we were sitting in Atlanta on Saturday afternoon and watching Georgia demolish LSU, and we knew what was coming on Monday. And I don't think we expected it to be as we knew it was going to be crazy in a sense of there's going to be a lot of people testing the waters. But man, what we are seeing in the transfer portal, Barrett, it is setting up for the future. And there's a lot of kids that are going to be looking for homes after January, I think, that aren't going to have a spot.
Yeah, over 1,000 kids in the portal as of this morning. I kind of thought there would be a small group that, just put their name in just every single year, which, I mean, look, I get it. It makes sense. You're going to improve or you're going to have issues. And so you want to find different spots after every season. And, I understand that, but I mean, it is just nonstop. The names that get put in there, I think that coaches and even players that are not putting their names in the portal probably did not expect the wild, wild west to be this wild. And the fact that you're getting so much booster money, collective money put in, the NCAA has got to be throwing their hands up in Indianapolis like, what do we do? What do we do? Because you're not supposed to recruit with NIL.
OutKick 360 rolls on. Look, every year we go crazy as sports media in general with some of these NFL contracts, when it's free agent season. And I have to tell people, like, guys, cool it. Wait for the winter meetings. And, then you've got Aaron Judge, who bets on himself and then just gets the bag. But here's the thing. So many players did. Would you start looking at these numbers? Michael McKenry with us. Michael, did you ever feel as though you know what? I got the bag today from the Pittsburgh Pirates or any of the organizations, the way some of these guys have felt over the weekend?
A bag, maybe. They've got a Brinks truck.
Well, that's fair.
I mean, these guys are just getting paid.
I know.
Never seen anything like it. And all the talk that they've been saying about, oh, the game's in trouble, we got to change this, we got to change that, it's all BS. I mean, these guys are getting paid, the game is doing well, and it's obviously been seen. Almost $1 billion given away at the winter meetings. It's been remarkable.
Michael McKenry with us, MLB analyst, former Major League Baseball catcher. I'm curious, as the player group that's not in a contract year, what is this past week like as numbers start rolling through? Is there a text chain? Are the agents going crazy? I know there's some main guys there. Are you comparing news and notes with what the contracts may look like and the fully guaranteed money for your position? What's it like?
I mean, there's a lot of chatter. I mean, you think about the agents, they're releasing false information. They're doing everything they can to kind of get their guy into the talk. I mean, Brian Reynolds is a great example. That man, I know him. I think the world of him. I do not believe he actually went out and said, hey, I want to get traded. That's not like him. He's a guy that's a competitor. He's going to take it one day at a time, one step at a time. He's going to wait for his turn, and he's under contract going to next year. So that's kind of what you're going to see happening. You're going to see a lot of buzz, a lot of different things. Not sure if it's true, if it's real. You kind of have to look a little bit deeper and kind of find out what's really going on. But these agents are hungry. I mean, they're getting 4 or 5% of these contracts, so they're going to do whatever they can. And don't think the MLB teams aren't doing the same thing. They're throwing out information, trying to see what's out there. We just saw a huge trade going to the Atlanta Braves and a catcher, the second best catcher, in my opinion, in all of baseball behind Realmuto, if you look at the numbers. So the reality of it is no one's safe, whether you're a free agent, whether you're a guy that's under team control for the next 4 or 5 years. The reality of it is, if the price is right, things are going to happen.
Let's talk about that Braves trade. Sean Murphy coming over from the A's. Admittedly, I didn't watch a lot of A's baseball this season, but I do find it interesting that every report has Braves trade for Sean Murphy and not anything about Contreras going to the Brewers, which tells me the Braves upgraded at catcher by sending Contreras as part of this 3-team trade to the Brewers, Sean Murphy to the Braves. Michael, this position you played in the majors. What can you tell us about Murphy from the A's?
I mean, you look at Murphy's numbers over the last couple of years, still young. He's 28 years old. He's under control through 2025. He's only going to be $3 million for the payroll. You look at the Braves payroll. They want to increase it. They haven't really made a splash. This is a splash. But what surprised me, I thought Contreras was really, really good behind the plate. I thought he hit the ball well last year. I thought you saw some growth. And obviously, if you look what his brother's done, it's really impressive. I think the Brewers actually came out on top in this trade. I think the Braves kind of dished out. They got some return, but it may take a little while to see what that has to hold. But if you look at it deeper, though, I was kind of impressed. 13 runs saved over his over last year defensively, top 10 in the major leagues in almost every defensive category. He's got 46 homers over his 3-year career. He's hitting 236, 326 on base percentage, and 429 slugging. You can put him in Atlanta. It's going to play a little bit better. The home runs are going to go up. He's going to get a better lineup, and he's going to play winning baseball. So this guy may take a huge step forward, and we're going to get to see the best 2 catchers in all of baseball in the same division. That's just fun for me.
You were consistent that the best spot, both financially for Aaron Judge and from a play standpoint, was going to be staying with the Yankees. That's what happens. He signs a $360 million contract. Now that the dust is settled, what do you make of Aaron Judge in this long-term deal to stay in New York?
I heard something really cool this past week. I was at Pirates Fantasy Camp. If you don't know what that is, look it up. It's absolutely outstanding. You're going to see a pure love of the game where 75-year-olds are beating it down the line, pulling hamstrings, blowing Achilles. I saw a split finger, not a pitch, but an actual split finger. The guy pitched the same day after he got stitches. Unreal. But I heard a story down there from another player. His agent is with Judge, and he said Judge called the Yankees, not the GM, not the president, called the owner, told him the offer, said, this is what I want, give it to me, I want to be a Yankee, and that's exactly what happened. And that's what baseball is all about. You start to have that dynamic with whether it be the owner, president, GM, that where you can call them and just say, hey, this is what I'm looking for. I want to end my career here. It started here. It's special to me. This past year was something that I couldn't draw up in absolute fantasy. And I want to try to continue forward, win a championship, and make sure that my number is retired next to all these greats. I mean, that's the special part about being a Yankee. I mean, the tradition, the history to it, and you're a huge part of it. Why would you want to leave? And the man's going to get $40+ million a year over the next 9 years into the 41-year season. Come on. What else could you ask for right there?
Braves fans not excited to see Trey Turner back in the NL East. He was a Braves killer with the Nats. He signs 11-year, $300 million deal with the Phillies to come back to the NL East and turns down even more money from the Padres, apparently, according to one report with this. What do you think about Trey Turner and his mixing in now with a really talented Phillies roster?
You know, listen to his press conference and him talking about going back where, you know, he knows some guys. You know, obviously he knows Harper, played with them, but he sees what's happening in Philadelphia. He saw what happened last year. The camaraderie and that culture that they built is going to draw free agents there. And two, just having that familiarity on the East Coast, wanting to be on the East Coast because of family means a lot. And I think that's showing, you know, kind of how everyone is, you know, started to sign. I mean, yeah, we've had San Diego make splash. LA's really quiet. San Fran's not getting what they're maybe thinking they were going to, especially with Judge. I mean, they're throwing out $400 million at these guys, and they're choosing to take less money, maybe a year or two extra to go to the East Coast. It's saying a lot on kind of where guys want to be, what they see, the culture dynamic, and maybe even just the front office, the way they can have attacked players in the past. It's saying a lot about the game of baseball, in my opinion.
Michael McKenry, our guest, Major League Baseball analyst, as well as a former catcher. Curious, as we look through the notable free agent signings with at least the $10 million annual average in value, what stands out to you as which team do you feel like got the best bang for their buck based on the big money that was dealt and handed out last week?
Man, that is a great question. I would say probably Cleveland. Getting Josh Bell for $33 million. He's a guy that's going to really bolster that lineup. It's somebody that can kind of jump right in the middle. It's only a 2-year commitment. I think it's amazing to me some of the length of these contracts. If you kind of look, guys are going to get into their 38, 39, 40-year-old season. I know Pujols did something absolutely spectacular this past year. That's not normal. I mean, you think about Trey Turner. This guy's going to be outstanding over the next 5 or 6 years. But when the speed starts to go, it's the first thing that starts to kind of deteriorate. How's that going to be? You get Xander Bogaerts. How's he going to be over 10 years from now, 11 years from now out in San Diego? It's not easy kind of playing over that fog of that 60-degree weather. It's 80 degrees during BP. It falls down. Guys get beat up out there. So the reality of it is those lengths of contracts going to hurt. I think in the long run, there's not a lot of good track record. But with that being said, you look at Verlander, $43 million. Max Scherzer, $43 million. Both going to be 39 going into their 40-year-old season. So it's the reality that you got to look at. I think LeBron James, Brady, Pujols have changed the game when it comes to age, but we'll see. I mean, it's ebb and flows in this game. It's ebb and flows in sports. Things seem to change. We're going really, really young. When you look at some of these guys that are coming up in Tatis and whatnot at 20, 21 years old, but they're also kind of going lengthy and long because that's the only way to grab these free agents.
So DeGrom out, and we'll talk about his destination momentarily. Verlander in for the Mets. Their rotation averages 34 years of age. Does the age of that starting rotation, even though they're very good and talented and have done a lot in this league, does that concern you at all if you're a Mets fan?
It should. I mean, the reality of it is Scherzer didn't pitch every game last year. Verlander's going into his year 2 after that Tommy John, even though he took it slow and he's a guy that stayed healthy for the most part over his years. And then the signing they just had from Japan, that guy's never thrown over 150 innings. And that's kind of what happens when guys come over from Japan. They pitch every 6 days. even though he's throwing 102, I mean, we saw what happened to the great one in Ohtani. He wasn't able to withstand kind of the wear and tear of a major league season. It's completely different. So there's going to be a lot of balance. I think the one thing that surprised me is they didn't go out, make sure that they got Bassett back. That guy is just an absolute workhorse. There'd be a great sign and a great fill in there. So the Mets, I think, have really just evened the kill of exactly where they were last year. They still need a bat, maybe to jump in the middle of that lineup to make sure that they're protected with Lindor and the big polar bear. If they don't do that, they're going to rely a ton on that pitching. They've lost some guys in the bullpen. They've spent a ton of money on David Robinson and $10 million. I thought he was outstanding. I love the guy, but he did it for 1 year. Can you do it again? That's the question, because you're only as good as your last game pitched. You're only as good as that next game you're actually going to walk out there and do it. So he's very, very good right now, but let's see where it goes. And there's a lot of money committed for a long time, so they're taking a huge risk.
We're with the Fort, Michael McKenry, with us on OutKick 360. Chad and I were talking last week about, plenty of team Mets, Yankees. Of course, you've got the San Francisco Giants that spent some money, but the Padres were in on a lot of players, and they ended up with Bogarts, but they've been willing to spend for a while now. What do you make of their mentality? And, you know, when I think of the big spenders in Major League Baseball, I think I'm in the majority here, I don't think of the Padres in like the top 5 teams, but yet they're named and they're willing to put offers out there. They were in on Judge. We certainly know their lineup. They had Bogarts. What are they doing? Aside from just spending a ton of money, what are they setting up and what are the expectations?
I mean, I think the reality of it is getting Tatis back. They're one of the best teams in all of baseball immediately. I know he failed his drug test. He can be back in April. The reality of that, putting that guy in left field, as athletic as he is, and putting Bogarts at shortstop, who is, in my opinion, one of the smartest guys and just a baseball savvy dude. That baseball IQ is something that's been lost, in my opinion, over the last couple of years. Guys just go out to chase numbers. They don't read the game. This guy reads the game. He's a teammate. Even his interview that he had, it was just absolutely outstanding about, you know, putting your ego aside, doing what you have to do. If they told him to move to second base, he's going to move there in a heartbeat. But the cool thing about that team is they see what's happening with LA. They see what San Francisco has and what they've kind of wanted to do over this next maybe year or two by rebuilding. They've gotten rid of a ton of money and they have a ton of money to spend. They do not want to be the third team in California. They do not want to see themselves looking up at San Fran and LA anymore. I think you look back at that 2020 season when LA came out on top and they tried to, you know, kind of fiddle a little bit. They paid Hosmer, show that they had that money. But ever since that signing, it didn't go the way they wanted to. Great guy, didn't put up the big numbers that they expected. Now that they got him off the books, it seems like they're pushing all their chips in and saying, we're going in, we're doing this, we're paying the guys we like. But I think they've done a really good job setting themselves up, especially with pitching. If they can stay healthy on the mound, good things are going to happen for them going forward.
As far as free agents remaining at each position, who stands out to you as maybe the player that you're next to see the domino fall with, or a position group that will set the bar for the other players available?
I'm obviously, being a catcher, very interested in that market. Turner to Miami just doesn't seem right. I feel like he's going to go back to LA. They need him in that lineup. They were one of the best lineups in all of baseball. But the one guy that stands out, and I got to say it because, one, we're talking to a lot of people that are Braves fans, is where's Dansby Swanson going to end up? It's either going to, in my humble opinion, he's either going to be a Cub, a Cardinal, or a Brave. And I'm very interested to see. Two of those affect, you know, my job a lot, being a Pirates analyst. You know, if the Cubs get him, that's a huge splash. I think they've already had a pretty good offseason, and getting Bellinger, it's going to be a fun team to watch. They had a really good rotation. Almost every single guy was under a 4, if not under a 3.5. So they're going to be sneaky good. And St. Louis obviously has already made a huge splash, getting the best catcher available in Contreras. So I think Dansby Swanson, personality-wise, fits in all 3 places. I don't care what anybody says. You lose that guy, his leadership, his energy, and everything he brings to the table. As good as the kid is that's going to replace him, he has a very short tenure in the big leagues. It's going to hurt the Braves. You know, I know they talk about, well, they replaced Freeman. They were able to overcome that. They were good. Yeah, but the reality of it is they didn't win the World Series. Freeman did win the World Series. You got to look at it for what it is and say, hey, this guy's special. He's homegrown, but there's a lot of reasons for him to go to St. Louis. He's going to be between 2 of the best infielders the last decade in Goldschmidt and Arenado. Why not? They need a shortstop. And the Cubs, I mean, his girl's there. He's got a lot of reasons to go to Chicago, and man, will they fall in love with him. So the Braves, I hope they step up, and I hope he's a Brave for life.
So Jacob deGrom goes to the Rangers, and right or wrong, when I see the Rangers pay big money for someone, I think someone's going there to lose a lot of baseball games. Same way I feel about the Angels, quite frankly. They're in the same category to me. They shell out a lot of money for a free agent, and you go there and you are hidden from the rest of the baseball world because you're not going to be relevant during your tenure there. Am I wrong about this move with the Rangers? Are they on the verge of something better? Do you think Jacob deGrom changes that Rangers franchise in any way?
If he stays healthy, he's the best pitcher in baseball. So, yes, he could, but he's got to stay healthy. I mean, that's the biggest key. He's going to go into Texas. He's going to play in a different division. He's going to have, the opportunity to play indoors more often, with both the Rangers and Houston being able to pull back that roof. So the reality of it is like it may be better for him. I'm not sure yet. I hope he stays healthy. When he's pitching, it's always better for baseball. And yes, you're right. With the Angels and Texas, it seems like they kind of go all in and nothing really maybe comes to fruition. But they didn't have that run where they were like the Bills of baseball, where they just couldn't seem to get over the top. It seemed like they're in the World Series year after year. They put good teams together. Now it's time for them to go over the top. And don't think the Angels aren't done. They're going to go get some pitching. They're going to do some things. It's the last year they have with Ohtani. He's going to be a free agent after this year, and the money that he's going to be thrown is going to be remarkable. They're also, changing ownership. When you change ownership, you see some weird things happen because they know, hey, this is our last opportunity. It's our last chance. So it's going to be a very interesting division, and never count out the A's, never count out any of those guys. But Houston Astros coming off a World Series win, they're so good. It's going to be very, very tough in the AL period to walk alongside the Yankees and the Astros. Those two teams are just going to be absolutely stacked.
It's all about the cash, but is there a story that you've heard or witnessed about icing on the cake that got a guy to sign?
I haven't yet. If I do, I'll let you know.
Okay.
I think the reality of Trey Turner being really upfront and honest early on, saying he wanted to be a Philly, and that was in the rumors, and knowing that some of those guys were calling him right from day one of free agency, hey, we want you, you fit perfect, and it seemed like Philly just pushed all their chips in. To me, that's so cool because that Harper and those guys were talking to the front office. And when that owner went up to Harper during, I believe is the NL Division Series and said, I underpaid you, that spoke a lot. I think every MLB player saw that and said, man, that's the guy I want to play with. I've never heard a guy say that, right? Like you get 20% return on your investment. Man, I underpaid you right there. No, they're not going to say that. Just at the end of the day, they're just going to say, man, I did really good, and pat themselves on the back. That guy was humble, put his ego aside, went up to Harper and said, thank you. And that means a lot to MLB players when owners can just kind of look outside themselves and say, hey, you guys are the ones on the field. I gave you a ton of money, and I regret not giving you more. That's special. So I would say that was the biggest story for me when you look at what that moment meant and kind of who they've signed, and guys seemingly kind of falling in line early, because I haven't seen a winter meetings like this in the last maybe 14, 15 years. I don't remember the last time all these signings happened. Usually you have Boris guys pushing down the line, signing late, almost into spring training. These guys are ready to go. They want to sign, and big money's being thrown at them.
Follow Michael McKenry on social media at @TheFortMcHenry. Thank you, Mike. Always good to catch up with you, man. Happy holidays, Merry Christmas, and we'll catch up soon. Great insight.
Hey, absolutely, guys. Thank you. God bless you. Merry Christmas.
Merry Christmas.
Merry Christmas, Michael. Thank you.
To Michael and the family there. Michael McKenry has been our guest.
It's going to be a very Merry Christmas for a lot of these guys who just got paid.
Yeah. And then once they get back to the locker room, is there like an unwritten rule you think about dinners and parties based on the money, or do you think they just straight up,
Baseball guys are very good about not spilling the tea, so to speak.
Or
Michael's another one of those guys.
Michael's
good about not.
Coffee,
whatever's going on, they don't talk about it because they are out so many nights of the year. Especially if you're a starting pitcher that pitches once a week and you're out of town. and you got other guys that might be able to get out on the town with you a little bit, there's not a lot of talk amongst that fraternity of what happens on these road trips and who pays for dinners and all of that. They're pretty tight-lipped.
Yeah, you're right. That's a great point. Great observation, Chad.
Yeah, smart group.
You've been digging on the financials.
I've been working on a book deal for years to get all the behind-the-scenes stories, and I just keep getting turned down at every single turn. So hopefully I can get someone to talk on the record.
On the record is the Baltimore Ravens quarterback injury concerns, and John Harbaugh normally just tells it like it is when it comes to Lamar Jackson's injury status, and now he's got Tyler Huntley in concussion protocol. We'll start there, and we'll go around the league with the biggest injury concerns for now Week 15. Maybe it's your fantasy team, your favorite team, or the team that your team is playing. We've got the update for you next on OutKick 360.
Two teams went out. One was actually a team from the unit that I now play on TV that was attached to us. They went out. They went on the front side, or went around to go to the front side of this other house, and my team was basically going towards the back side of the house. So very shortly, what happened was it was the wrong house, and when we hit that one house, the actual house it was, which was next door, which is not exactly next door because Sutter City is kind of weird of how it's built. But, you know, they heard us. They were getting ready, prepping, you know, their gear, you know, and so they were ready to go. So when that team came around, a bunch of dudes opened up out of the front, what I assume would be the living room, with AKs and shot. I think they shot 3. If I'm not mistaken, they shot 3 of the members of that team. 2 of them were pretty much out of the fight at that point. But they were, I mean, it was heavy. I wasn't on that side of the house, but just hearing it, I was like, oh man, that's extreme. So I ran into the back door, which came into the kitchen, cleared through there, went in the hallway, and those same guys, as we approached that room, shot through the walls of that hallway, shot the guy literally right next to me. So then we backed off, and then we were and I'd have to draw it out, but we were in a tactical position that was just there wasn't a lot we could do. So we were trying to kind of figure out how to solve it. And the next thing I know, I remember just the whole room, or actually it wasn't really a room, it was the hallway, you know, so it was more like a tube straight at me, and just everything exploded. And I actually remember hitting the ground and looking up down the hallway. And I was just confused. I didn't know what had happened. And I can say, you know, getting shot at, okay. It's one thing, but the explosion made me feel small. It was like a superhero just grabbed me and was like, or it was like the Hulk grabbed me and was like, it felt like a supernatural power. And it blew, so it was a nighttime hit. It blew my nods and my nod mount off my face. So I went from, you know, under nods to not being able to see anything. It obviously, my arm, I thought it blew off. I'm trying to think of what else it wrecked, but wrecked several things. But and everything was pitch black for me, and I really didn't know what was going on. I just felt my arm was blown off, so I got up and walked outside to the back, and there was a wall that we had hopped to get in. That wasn't happening, so I just put my back against the wall and tried to take care of myself. But I never lost consciousness. The only time actually I did lose consciousness is when, and I still to this day don't know how they got me over that wall. I have no idea. But other than that, probably 5 minutes that they got me over the wall, I never lost consciousness.
OutKick 360 rolls on. Chad, are you with me that Cincinnati is going to eventually catch Baltimore? Do they continue to win these tight games? They found a run game yesterday against Pittsburgh. Baltimore did.
I have no idea how they haven't caught them already.
Well,
and it's going to happen very quickly now, especially considering the injury info.
I mean, I think
that you're about to give to us. I would think.
I mean, just considering the rash of injuries across the league, and let's start with Lamar Jackson, who continues to rehab, but you also now have Huntley in concussion protocol, and so now they enter a week where they've got to figure out what's going to. I mean, the benefit for Baltimore, though, is they can run it. And Harbaugh said in a 16-14 game yesterday over Pittsburgh, we found our run game. Our run game showed up and led us to a win. And that's the one thing that they can hang their hat on week in and week out. With Huntley, with Lamar Jackson, the headlines last week, no Lamar Jackson, no problem. And that's a 10-9 win over Denver that we're talking about.
It's a problem. I mean, look, if it's not a problem, then Lamar Jackson ultimately is a problem. If you can go from a guy who won MVP in this league to a backup and then a third-string guy and say, no Lamar Jackson, no problem. I understand that the Ravens are built different than a lot of NFL teams. That's a problem, though, for that team moving forward. And Cincinnati's not going anywhere. They're only getting better.
The concussions yesterday, Kenny Pickett and Russell Wilson, man. The way he was knocked out on the field and just the look of the camera angle of his, it was awful. It looks, I mean, I see guys, UFC get knocked out all the time. And these quarterbacks that are getting, Traylon Burks, another one
the whole,
a week ago.
Started with Tua, earlier this year with the scary moment with him. And that brought a lot of discussion around quarterbacks and concussions in football again. And we've seen a number of those this year. It's been wild to watch. The Kenny Pickett one, to me, was the most egregious because of the way he was thrown to the turf off of his head.
Yeah, and I mean, because he's thrown down and it's slung down in a way where we've seen, Chris Jones and others earlier this year throws Tom Brady down or whatever, and you see the flags thrown and it's immediate controversy.
See, I feel, I know this is not easy. We talked about, possible rules to stop people faking injury earlier. I would propose anytime you have to stop the game because of injury, you have to sit out 3 plays. So that way, if you're actually hurt, you're hurt. You have to sit out plays no matter what. And if you're not, it's a penalty to you because you faked an injury and you can't come right back in the game. If you are a player, I want to do away with the chintzy personal fouls and late hits and roughing the passer calls that we've all seen over and over again on a loop that are terrible at times. But if you do something like that, and you willfully take out a quarterback with a concussion or an injury because of a bad hit, I think you should be ejected from the game. Quarterback sits, you sit. As long as he's out, you're out. That simple. So whoever you are, if you knock someone out of the game in that fashion, the way Kenny Pickett got knocked out of the game, being slammed to the turf, and if you're watching, you'll be able to see exactly what we're talking about with a photo of him being slammed to the turf. As long as Kenny Pickett is out with concussion, you're out of the game. Simple to me.
Yeah, the other injuries of note, Deebo Samuel with an ankle injury, and we're hearing from Shanahan he expects that Deebo will be able to play, most likely a high ankle sprain, and that timeline of that puts them back, and one of their top players that they've invested in this offseason would be back by the postseason in a month or so. Mike White with the rib injuries. There is a quality of Justin Herbert that I still think about when I see him play now, that he played through, week 1, I believe, the injury concerns of week 1 or week 2 in prime time. It was the first Thursday Night Football game on Amazon. And that stuck with me, the toughness angle. And I think that absolutely carries over in an NFL locker room, especially at quarterback. And when Chad made the comparison, it's a great one. Mike White to what we've seen from Zach Wilson at the podium. And the toughness that is involved in that rings across a locker room whenever you're in the cutthroat time of NFL playoff matchups and trying to get in and scratch and claw. You want to fight for that guy. And yesterday, the elements, the Bills were knocking him around, and he wasn't having it. He was not. Joe Flacco came in for a brief periods to relieve Mike White. Mike White came back twice, then immediately went to the hospital after the game.
You love it. Because everyone in the locker room, you just assume, oh, the quarterback's the diva. The quarterback's not as tough as we are. And when you can see a quarterback being that tough and being hospitalized and coming back from it and continuing to get back up, that's always going to endear yourself to your offensive line, to your defense, to everyone out there. And Zach Wilson did the opposite with his post-game comments earlier this year. Now, Zach Wilson can come back from it. He apologized for it. And he did a good job of talking about why he was wrong to react that way after a loss. But Mike White's not having to apologize for anything right now.
No.
And I don't know that that's a great sign for the Jets organization because it puts them more into a conundrum with the number 2 overall pick. But it's a great sign for this team right now that's making a playoff push.
Josh Bell, it seems, is the starting right tackle now for the Dallas Cowboys because Terrence Steele has a torn ACL and MCL. He left the game yesterday against the Texans and, of course, done for the season. So now Josh Bell, the backup reserve offensive lineman swing guy, he's your starting right tackle for the Dallas Cowboys. This is a week or two, I believe, since Anthony Brown, one of the corners, another starter, suffered an Achilles injury, so he's done for the year as well. And that was against the Colts in Week 13. Another one to watch there on a good team, a playoff team that now has one of their backup offensive linemen in the starting lineup for the run game and for pass protection against some really good pass rushes that they're going to be facing in postseason play. By the way, Cowboys signed T.Y. Hilton, bringing in the veteran.
They didn't get the one we all thought they might because of injury problems, but T.Y. Hilton makes sense.
Headlines next.
College football's in trouble. There's a lot of people trying to keep it from happening.
I think it's a general consensus across the college football landscape. We want to play football.
College football is a huge part of the fall. It's a huge part of Americana itself.
It just really felt like people in the country needed college football to just feel a little sense of normal.
Big news from the Big Ten as the conference releasing its 10-game football schedule.
We go home thinking that we're going to be practicing the next day. Everybody gets a text, stay home, everything's canceled.
Big Ten fall football season has been canceled.
We just believe collectively there's too much uncertainty.
I guess what I'm trying to understand, though, Kevin, is that was the same position you had 6 days ago.
The Big Ten is an unmitigated disaster.
There was a ton of confusion. There was presidents saying one thing, there was coaches saying another.
Players had to be silent, coaches had to be silent, ADs had to be silent.
People said, how does what you just did make any sense?
And nobody really knew what the heck happened when they voted to cancel the season.
You make this huge historical announcement, and then Kevin Warren never does a press conference to explain it. It was like a masterclass in how not to handle a crisis.
The word really that was lacking in all of this is transparency.
It felt like a lot of stuff was happening behind closed doors.
Even today, we still don't know what occurred.
So you don't tell us parents, that's fine, but you're not telling the young men that it affects.
We have to make a decision to save the season. What about the history books? What about the rivalry games? What about Paul Bunyan's axe? How is that not going to go to a team this year?
This is a failure of epic magnitude. The Big Ten presidents and leaders should be held accountable for the disastrous decisions that they're making.
Then the commissioner doubles down, saying his decision will not be revisited.
And that's the point it felt like a war was declared on the Big Ten and Kevin Warren.
Everything turned political.
Because if this is medical, then you would have stopped the game of football a long time ago.
I think the Big Ten leaders will tell you that they probably made a mistake in hindsight.
If I had the chance to do it all over last year, I would make the same decisions that we made.
Final hour is here. OutKick 360, Monday edition, recapping the weekend. Plenty of NFL news and notes. We'll get back to that coming up. The headlines also from college football. We've seen all the college football awards, but Heisman Trophy handed out to Caleb Williams. And the top 10 vote getters, Hendon Hooker, 5th on the list, behind Stetson Bennett, who was the last player invited to New York this past weekend. Caleb Williams, Max Duggan, C.J. Stroud, Stetson Bennett. That's how the four were voted when Caleb Williams was announced as the Heisman winner. Followed by Hendon Hooker, Bryce Young 3rd, Blake Corum, Michael Penix Jr., Bijan Robinson, and Drake May round out your top 10. And Chad, the 6 through 10 there I think that's the proper order considering the coverage of everything. I'm still surprised as you look at that list. It's hard to find defense. And normally, like in a top 10 list, you're looking around. I would think at least one defensive player would come to mind for a voter on a three-player option. And that was not the case this year. It's a bit surprising. I'm not saying that there was a ton of just national award winners when it came to that. There's some really good players, some dominant players. And I think Bijan Robinson, for me, would be higher. But other than that, I don't really have a discrepancy with the back end of the top 10.
Yeah, Davey was saying earlier that Caleb Williams had the worst Pro Football Focus grade of any Heisman Trophy winner since PFF has been around on the season. He had one truly bad game that was I've compared him to Hendon Hooker a lot because that's the comparison statistically in a lot of ways. Hendon Hooker never had a game as bad as he had against Oregon State, where he was something like 14 for 36 with 100 and something yards in the game, Caleb Williams. Other than that, he was really good most of the year. He was not good after he got dinged up with the hamstring injury in the Pac-12 championship. They lost to one team twice, losing to Utah in Salt Lake City and then in Vegas for the Pac-12 championship. I mean, of the 4 finalists that are there, I don't have a huge objection to Caleb Williams being the winner.
Yeah.
I would have preferred Max Duggan. He ends up finishing 2nd. I think C.J. Stroud at 3. You could argue between him and Stetson Bennett 3 or 4. I probably would have given Stetson Bennett the nod at number 3 ahead of C.J. Stroud.
I would have too.
But, I mean, you asked the question, why no defensive player in there? Because the school and media didn't do a good enough job hyping up one defensive player. I really feel it comes down to that. I think if television networks involved in college football and media would have gotten behind someone early and they went on to have a great season defensively, or even after a couple of weeks, if something would have caught fire, probably would have seen one in the top 10. Maybe not winning it, maybe top 5. But it's just this wasn't a year where that was one of the talked about players.
You know, I also like –
it's sad to say that, but that's how these things go. When you have 900 people voting, they're following the headlines, most of them. So if there's not a defensive player that's in the headlines every week getting a lot of Heisman buzz from shows that talk about college football and everything else out there, then it's not going to happen. If College Game Day chose to do a piece on a defensive player multiple times throughout the season, I bet he would have finished top 10. Maybe not gone to New York, probably would have finished top 10 because enough people would have seen it.
Yeah, I'm thinking through. Like, I don't know. I mean, are colleges investing in the hype train like the way they used to, trying to send out Heisman finalist materials? Because these guys...
It's not as much material. It's more social media now that they'll start. But it also starts late.
But you got to get it in the hands, like mailing stuff to the voters.
Yeah.
Examples of... I don't know if they're doing that to nearly the extent they would have a decade ago. Are high school kids... Is the Heisman Trophy list? I think it matters at quarterback. It matters for Lincoln Riley as head coach at SC. Does the Heisman Trophy garner the same attention it would have if you had this run of Heisman Trophy winners? I mean, there's been a nice string of solid QB play at Alabama over the last 5 to 10 years now, and we saw our first Alabama quarterback and Bryce Young win it a year ago. Here's the list of the past Heisman Trophy winners. It's a quarterback award. That's why I think that leans into our colleges pushing this as much because they know it's really not going to impact the overall momentum as much as, I mean, what's it worth to a college to have a top 10 defensive player in the top 10 of the Heisman Trophy ballot? I don't know. But you look through the list and you can see a couple of Lincoln Riley QBs.
Derrick Henry's in there.
Henry and Devontae Smith.
Sure. Two Alabama guys as the outliers. This is the 8th Heisman Trophy for USC, and I'm sorry that they want us to say that Reggie Bush didn't win it and that it really just ties Notre Dame and Oklahoma with 7, but it's 8 because Reggie Bush, took a house or a rental payment for a house for his parents in San Diego from an agent before he's supposed to. All of this stuff is completely legal now, and he won the Heisman, okay? That's 8 for USC. They're in first. There, we said it. OutKick 360 decided that's 8 Heisman trophies for USC. We're not going to stick to this ridiculous claim that he doesn't have it.
I didn't decide. We didn't decide. The Heisman voters decided when they gave it to him. Vince Young said as much. Vince Young finished second that year, and he was asked about it when he played here in Nashville for the Titans, and he said no. Reggie Bush is the Heisman winner.
Yeah.
He won the trophy.
Didn't go to Vince Young after the fact. So that's 8 for USC, which is an accomplishment for them. Now, here's where it does absolutely help in recruiting. Lincoln Riley is now the Heisman whisperer at 2 different places.
Mm-hmm.
And he becomes the second coach ever to produce a Heisman Trophy winner as head coach at 2 different places. So
it matters there.
Yes.
But, I mean,
you take your pick of some of the top quarterbacks in football.
But
if you're Lincoln Riley,
it matters there because Hendon Hooker got hurt, right? Like that to me is the reason. If I'm looking to invest in, again, I'm just looking. If it's about promotion, I don't know why we don't see more of it, or we're just not flooded with it. Because I don't know if the brand itself matters for the individual. I don't know in today's transfer portal world if I'm investing as heavily in it, knowing that these guys are bouncing around the way they are. They're here for a year, but is that part of the deal? Like, come here, we're going to promote you for the Heisman? Like, you've got to be able to put up the numbers to get behind the promotion, then you're gone.
Yeah, I think the days, to answer your, it's a thought-provoking question, and I think the days, Hutton, of teams and schools starting out the season with a Heisman push. I think about the movie The Program. They wanted before the season, we're going to do a full, extensive Heisman Trophy layout for Joe Kane. Kane is able. And they have the slogans, the bumper stickers, and everything else. I think those days are gone where you're putting mailers out and you've got all the stats listed and you're sending it to Heisman voters before the season. It starts later now. An example, just following Tennessee football on social media, the Hendon Hooker for Heisman social media campaign started by the fans much quicker. I feel like really didn't start almost until after he was hurt. I mean, that late in the season. It was starting right around that time, but there were videos. And then once he was out, there was a concerted effort to post very well-produced highlight packages, why he should be in New York, hashtags with that.
Well, they could win their first,
stats. Though. Everyone's posted his stats compared to everyone else, even with the game he didn't play in the last regular season game. All of that stuff started very late. So I think it's just a later process now. Now, going somewhere to try to win a Heisman, I mean, you're one of the top 4 or 5 quarterbacks in the country already. If you're really considering saying, hey, Drake May. Drake May is not going to leave North Carolina because he's a North Carolina family and he's going to stay. His older brother was a great player in basketball in North Carolina. I think his dad played there. But Drake May is an example. Drake May was awesome. Top 10 for the Heisman Trophy this year as a redshirt freshman. Could Drake May go to USC, when Caleb Williams is gone, or go somewhere that's produced Heisman Trophy winners to go win a Heisman and say, this is what I'm going to do? Sure, you could try that, especially now that his offensive coordinator is at Wisconsin with Phil Longo gone. But I just –
it's a good –
the pool of that happening is just so shallow of players that could actually try that.
But that's why you would do it. You're not up against the country. You're up against about 5 quarterbacks. You just got to outplay 5 quarterbacks.
It's why Jalen Hurts, when he lost his job to Tua at Alabama, went to Oklahoma.
Yes.
So, but he lost his job too. So, what I'm saying is, if you get yourself to be a Heisman hopeful at a school, there are rare opportunities, unless you lose your job for whatever reason, to go somewhere else to say, well, now I'm going to go from Heisman hopeful at this Power 5 school to Heisman winner at this school. That's just a shallow pool of people that could say that.
Hit us up with your thoughts at OutKick 360. Terrible news that came out over the weekend from Qatar with U.S. soccer journalist Grant Wahl dying at the World Cup, where it was going viral, where he was not allowed access into one of the stadiums for the USA Wales game a couple weeks ago, and he was told he had to change his shirt.
Yeah,
he was not allowed in, and then we find out this past weekend about the news of Wahl dying there. He was awful news, and plenty of questions with this story. His body is back with his family. We do have reports of that.
Yeah, it's been flown to the United States today. So this happened on Friday. I know news started breaking of this Friday night happening. Terrible story because not a huge soccer guy. Well, we've talked about that. But I know Grant Wahl.
Yeah.
If there's any soccer story in the United States, it's Grant Wall's story. I mean, he's the voice, mouthpiece of U.S. soccer and soccer in this country. And he has been probably since 1994 when the United States hosted the World Cup the last time. I mean, it's been that long that he's been a big voice in U.S. soccer.
He tried to run for FIFA president against Sepp Blatter, right? I mean, you want to talk about corrupt with FIFA. And, he's trying to run to run FIFA just to prove a point and report on the process there. But, I mean, he's never been shy from stepping into what is a very corrupt sport globally. Look at the World Cup and where we are right now in Qatar, where
they're trying to get an Olympics, by the way, also.
Yeah.
And they probably will because the IOC is equally as corrupt.
Yeah.
As FIFA. So they'll probably award them with that. I have an extremely hard time watching people celebrate the television drama theater of this World Cup and talk about how awesome everything is, knowing it's happening in this country and Grant Wahl is dead and all of these weird things are going on around it. Maybe I'm alone here, and it's probably in large part because I don't love the sport of soccer.
Well, no.
But it affects my enjoyment of the event, knowing what all went into building the stadiums in this country, knowing what's going on in the country, knowing how corrupt FIFA is. It affects my enjoyment. I love the Olympics. I didn't watch more than 5 minutes of the Beijing Winter Olympics. I forgot that it happened because of everything going on with it.
Well,
and I'm not an overly political person, but when corrupt factors lead to a lot of bad things happening to provide a world stage and a global audience in a place that does not deserve an event like this, it affects my enjoyment of it.
And they're making over $7 billion in ad revenue. That's been reported. And here's the part of it too. You're saying it's glorified, theater, right?
Yeah.
I mean, the response, if this was Major League Baseball wanting to put the All-Star game in Atlanta, or Carolina and Charlotte with the NBA because of a bathroom bill, you can't play an exhibition game in those stadiums. But yet, this can be classified as great theater for the country and the great accomplishment. We're really overlooking that. And then you've got Wahl was detained for 25 minutes because he was wearing a shirt with a rainbow on it and tweeted it out. I mean, he took a selfie and said, "Hey, I've been detained."
It was in support of I think he said his gay soccer fans across the world.
Yeah, I mean, he's I'm not taking it off, and I'm going in. And then he updated everyone and said he made it through. But he'd also said that he wasn't feeling well, that he'd been in bad health or something too.
Yeah, bronchitis-like symptoms he was experiencing.
It's very peculiar with all of it.
It's very peculiar, and this is where, going back to your point about the bathroom bill and all-star games being taken out, voting bills, and this shows the stupidity of our country and our pro sports leagues and the ignorance of how bad it is in other places.
Yes.
And I don't ever want anything bad to happen to Grant Wahl, and don't take this as me saying that anything that happened, if something was afoot or there's foul play involved in this, that anything is right about it. But you can protest things in America and be fine. We have the right to be stupid and move a damn NBA All-Star game because a state would have the audacity to make men go to the men's room and women go to the women's room. We have the right to be that dumb. You go to Qatar and you wear a rainbow shirt and you start talking about how backwards their country is while in their country covering an event, bad things may happen. You might get detained. Or God forbid, something else might happen to you also. That's why I'm so thankful that we live and work here. Because this is what happens in other countries. And there are people that if you live in America and you're accustomed to protesting things and you're accustomed to speaking out against things, those things don't happen to you in this country. When you go to Russia, when you go to places in the Mideast, when you go to China, if you do these things, watch what happens to their own citizens. Watch how they conveniently disappear at times. How do you think they're going to treat an American that's doing that? That's coming in to tell them how to live? Bad things happen at times. I pray that nothing sinister is afoot with the whole Grant Wall story. But the moment I saw that he was wearing that shirt and he was getting detained, I was seriously concerned.
Yes.
I was concerned for his well-being from that moment on.
Well,
and when this happened, I thought, oh, no.
There was
Please
something,
say nothing happened.
I'm just now thinking of this. The WWE has a $50 million per year deal, or did. It's probably more now. But Vince McMahon did the first big event in Qatar. They went over. It was in Saudi Arabia somewhere. One of the spots there. They were there, and there were reports from Dave Meltzer and others saying that they were scared they weren't going to get out of the country. Like they were getting straight to the airport, on the plane, and out with everybody after the event based on some things going down. So, I mean, for those that say, oh, yeah, but sure, there's plenty of stuff going on behind the scenes. And that goes to the point and emphasis on the IOC or FIFA, where they take these massive events globally, and while we can sit here and complain about it, ultimately, no one's doing anything about it.
Well, I hate that we have these some places that, it's so difficult. There is no free speech, and terrible things happen all the time. I hate that we have this to use as a point of reference. I wish some places didn't exist like this, and that you didn't have to worry about that all the time. But it's a great point of reference for the next time you get overly worked up about something in this country and you move an exhibition game out of a place because of something, when you can look around the world, or you go extreme and compare something here to something in history or something all over the world. These are solid reminders that it may not be all bad in America, with the rights that we have and the ability we have to protest and the freedoms we have in this country compared to other places.
Yes.
And I hate that stories like this have to happen, or that Qatar gets awarded a FIFA World Cup to put it on display for the world to see. But it's a good reminder.
And from 2019, in November, the headline reads, WWE Chairman Vince McMahon's issue with Crown Prince lead to plane mishap in Saudi Arabia, where there was a money dispute and some things going on, and all of a sudden mechanical issues started to happen on the tarmac. So, again, this makes me raise an eyebrow, given the fact of the timeline of the social media posts and everything going on, and the fact that everything went down the way it did. Now, another photojournalist has also died while covering this event. And I believe on the same day that a worker or a fan fell from somewhere and died. So it's just, it's mounting. And, I thought, Chad, we would see more issues of those that are protesting certain global issues and how Saudi would respond to it.
I haven't seen a lot of people protesting.
Well,
I think most of the people that are there understand that, it's a precarious situation.
The players certainly have in certain instances.
Well, some of the players have protested their own country and got in trouble. Iran, for example, tried to do something during their Iranian national anthem, and they were told, don't do that or your family members are in danger. And guess what? They stood and honored the Pledge of Allegiance for their country the next go around in the next match. So I don't know. Again, I don't know how much protesting's been going on against Qatar during this, the way we saw with Grant Wall.
Coming up, Chad, a proposal. Let's dive into the NFL news and notes from yesterday we didn't hit earlier in the show. And then to end, your coaching altercation that you witnessed and then inserted yourself into.
Altercation, it wasn't physical by any means.
I'm reading exactly what it says.
No one was. Yeah, it's what I said. I'm not criticizing. I'm trying to set it up because
I don't want to oversell this.
Let me sell it this way. I've been around a lot of youth sports. I have never witnessed what happened in this game before from the opposing coach of this game. It was crazy. And I'll explain the entire story of a first and second grade girls basketball game gone wild.
That's coming up in 20 minutes after NFL news, notes, headlines, big takeaways from the weekend on OutKick 360.
Today's edition of the Trey Wallace Podcast. Happy to be joined by Barrett Salee. Everything is powered by OutKick.com. Barrett Salee of CBS Sports joins us. What's up, buddy?
Oh, just getting through transfer portal palooza, bowl games. It's funny, Trey. I don't know if you feel this way, but I've noticed this for a while now. The offseason in college football is so much crazier because there's no structure to it. Like there's not like a pattern like there is during game week. I mean, it's been crazy the last couple of days.
It hasn't stopped, and that's the wild part about it. I mean, we were sitting in Atlanta on Saturday afternoon and watching Georgia demolish LSU, and we knew what was coming on Monday. And I don't think we expected it to be as we knew it was going to be crazy in a sense of there's going to be a lot of people testing the waters. But man, what we are seeing in the transfer portal, Barrett, it is setting up for the future. And there's a lot of kids that are going to be looking for homes after January, I think, that aren't going to have a spot.
Yeah, over 1,000 kids in the portal as of this morning. I kind of thought there would be a small group that, just put their name in just every single year, which, I mean, look, I get it. It makes sense. You're going to improve or you're going to have issues. And so you want to find different spots after every season. And, I understand that, but I mean, it is just nonstop. The names that get put in there, I think that coaches and even players that are not putting their names in the portal probably did not expect the wild, wild west to be this wild. And the fact that you're getting so much booster money, collective money put in, the NCAA has got to be throwing their hands up in Indianapolis like, what do we do? What do we do? Because you're not supposed to recruit with NIL.
About 10 minutes, we'll preview tonight's Monday Night Football matchup, Patriots-Cardinals. Cardinals still in line for a top 5 pick, potentially.
There's no mistake in a Monday. It's always, there's a certain feeling about it. I'm not going to go into an Office Space quote right now, but there's always a certain vibe to a Monday. You can mistake Tuesday for Wednesday or Wednesday for Thursday, but you always know when it's Monday. And today is Monday. And now I just hear the Monday Night Football theme echo in my head as I say that.
It's still difficult for me to think of Joe Buck and Troy Aikman for Monday Night Football. Chad, give us the rundown. Do you remember the guest list tonight for the Manningcast?
Off the top of my head, Bill Simmons makes his first return to ESPN since leaving ESPN or not being invited back. Not quite sure which happened, but he's not there anymore. Still very successful. Keegan-Michael Key, Joe Burrow, and
Adam Vinatieri. Finally loaded
That's the fourth.
It's
a good list.
I came in and Chad was reading these off. I was like, that's awesome. And how long has it been that Simmons has been off ESPN?
I don't know, but it's his first time back on an ESPN property.
That
as
will
a
be
favorite
really
of the
good.
Manning boys.
That will be really good.
Yeah, I think they'll be good with him too.
Trevor Lawrence, one of the top storylines that's not talked about today because of the other quarterback play yesterday. But Chad, do you feel like he's turned a corner with his overall play? We have seen him now with some really solid performances. The game against Detroit last week was not good. But I think off the first half of the year compared to now, I think there is more of a chemistry, more of a comfortable look to that offense, considering what Doug Peterson brings, which is stability, which is what he didn't have last year as a rookie. I think they're on a nice trajectory. They have hit on some very young players, some solid draft picks. They've Trayvon Walker.
He looked great.
Trayvon Walker was solid. He was an impact player yesterday for Jacksonville against the Titans. They have a player at every level, young talent at each level, from corner to linebacker and now at pass rush, where you flip it and you start looking around at their offense and you think, man, they've invested at wide receiver. Evan Ingram had a career day. I mean, his numbers yesterday were the best of any tight end this season. And Trevor Lawrence was just in rhythm. Now, they feel like they've got their guy, Travis Etienne. He wasn't much of a factor yesterday, but they had a second option. And Trevor Lawrence stepped up and made huge plays.
Before I go and crown Trevor Lawrence,
I'm not looking to crown.
I will say he was terrific yesterday. He was great, but I felt like we'd have more days like this for Trevor Lawrence. I also watch that game and immediately think, how bad was Urban Meyer a year ago?
Yeah.
Because he ruined year one for Trevor Lawrence. Watching him play last year against the same Titans team versus watching him this year in Nashville against the Titans, my first thought was, man, Urban Meyer really sucks.
Yeah.
And that's true when you watch Trevor Lawrence in that game. The thought right after that, though, is why have we not said that more often this year? Because Doug Peterson's a really good coach and a really good offensive coach. Starting to get more of that now. If this continues with Trevor Lawrence, he showed every bit of his ability yesterday. He stiff-armed a Titans linebacker on a run for a touchdown in this game. He has the ability to run. He was putting it on the money. He was throwing lasers. He was lofting it to the end zone to Evan Ingram for a touchdown. Great performance by Trevor Lawrence, but I'm still a little bit mystified by him so far in his NFL career.
Yeah, they should be more consistent. They're consistent in tight games. I mean, they're not closing games, and it's very similar to where the Titans were 5 years ago, where they had to learn. They would talk about learn how to win, But that starts with Lawrence, and he has won at every level. It's very hard for me not to see where the division is right now and not look at that team as the team that will be in the best position to take over 2 years from now in the AFC South. And I only say that because the Titans are about to go in rebuild mode.
Yeah, they're on the rise, and you can't say that about any other team.
Indy's got to get the quarterback right. And Houston lacks true leadership from the top down.
Houston's going to have the opportunity because of high draft picks, but Jacksonville's the only team I look on the field and think they're only going to get better. The Titans are going to have to get worse before they get better again, The Colts, I have no clue what's going to happen with them. And the Texans are just so bad.
Well, they could change their coach again.
And there's just not a lot
there's no rhythm to it. There's no path.
I watched. I said with the Texans, I like Jalen Petrie, the safety from Baylor.
Yeah.
I mean, there's some young pieces there to like, but there's still nothing really jumping out to you. The Jags should have the quarterback in Trevor Lawrence. They've got good pieces around him. Trayvon Walker really jumped out to me yesterday. Yeah, this is going to be the Jags' division to win if they do the right things over the next few years. The Titans are certainly slipping.
Yes. Looking through some other headlines, the Bengals are not slipping. Cowboys hang on yesterday. But, Chad, the Detroit Lions are the team that has really come out of nowhere, that are playing extremely well, and offensively, they can go toe-to-toe with anyone right now.
Jared Goff surprises me.
Yeah, and
he's not having a great year, but just the fact that
he's not throwing those picks. He's not turning it over.
I mean, they were 1-6. When they were 1-6, if you told me they're going to be 6-7 and Jared Goff is going to be helping with that,
but the issue with the Lions, where they were averaging like 33 points a game in a start to the season where offense was awful.
Aaron Glenn was,
and they were losing
about him
games.
Getting fired mid-season.
So they were still putting up points. They just weren't winning games because they were losing shootouts. They lost. Let's just go through the quick headlines. They lost to the Eagles in Week 1, 38-35. They beat the Commanders 36-27. They lose to the Vikings 28-24. They lose to the Seahawks 48-45. They beat the Patriots The Patriots beat them, 29-0. And this is where they went through that lull. 29-0. They lost to the Cowboys 24-6, and that's when everyone threw in the towel.
Yeah.
Dolphins went on the road and won 31-27. And then they turned it around. They beat the Packers. They beat the Bears 31-30. Beat the Giants 31-18. I mean, 31 points. That is on par with what Buffalo's offense is doing. You know, you're putting up. It's numbers that are similar scoreboard wise to what Philly does.
Again, surprised.
Yes, I know. I mean,
no one talks about that. Yes, DeAndre Swift. They've got a great running game, but St. Brown's a nice story at receiver. I mean,
they've scored 30+ in their last.
I'm impressed.
4 of their last 5 games, and they've scored 34. Of course, yesterday 40 the week prior against Jacksonville.
Very impressive.
So
Did not think it was possible with Jared Goff.
So, are you on board the train to see if they can push in as a last wild card team?
Oh yeah.
I mean, I'd love to see it.
Absolutely. The same reason I'm rooting for the Bills to win the Super Bowl this year.
I wonder.
I'm rooting for the Detroit Lions to get to the playoffs. It's a great story.
At 6-7, I mean, you start looking around and you think, man, what would it take? The NFL playoff picture. Let me just see exactly where the seed would be right now. Right now, the Giants are in. The Giants are going to fall off. They're going the opposite way of what the Lions have done. And this week they've got the rematch against Washington, who's coming off of the bye week, the Commanders.
I'll be pulling for them.
Chad, your NFL playoff picture. Your Lions. Chad's Lions now.
Tell me about my Lions.
I threw in the
Tell
towel
me about Jared Goff,
they're the
my
9
favorite
seed.
quarterback.
So currently they're the 9 seed. You've got Seattle, and Seattle's the first team out, followed by Detroit, and then Green Bay's at 5 and 8 at 10. So there is a path for them, and Seattle will face on a short week. I believe they host San Francisco. They're hosting San Francisco this week on Thursday. So the Thursday night football game is Brock Purdy against Geno Smith.
Well, that's the other one that surprised me yesterday was Carolina going to Seattle and winning.
Well, I didn't know on Friday, Thursday, I didn't know the injury status of Deontay Foreman. And then on Friday they cleared him, so I didn't include Carolina in my upset picks. But Seattle's defense, man, they are a sieve for the run. Like you can run the football, and in this case, it wasn't even really that. We're watching this game yesterday. This was more about short field position and Carolina taking advantage of that because of turnovers and special teams miscues and mishaps. Carolina went up there, and I mean, now you've got a situation where they've improved by getting players off the roster, which is weird. right? Like
Yeah.
their momentum right now. And Steve Wilkes.
Addition by subtraction.
Steve Wilkes is making a case to stick around either in Carolina or get other interview
if he
opportunities.
doesn't, that lawsuit's going to get a little bit more pumped up against the league.
It must have been week 2 when I threw this out there. Like week 8, whenever we saw the change with Matt Rule. I mean, it was obvious that he's already involved in. His name is added to the lawsuit with Brian Flores, and yeah, if they don't retain him, he's already said that he was a coach in waiting, or they were waiting on a coach, so they hired him in Arizona for that 1 year. That's what he's alleged with Arizona. But man, you can't deny what he's doing right now.
No,
which is
they've
fantastic.
improved.
He's 4-4. I mean, it's a very improved team for a Carolina team that's going nowhere with Matt Rule and Baker Mayfield at quarterback.
Sam Darnold, starting quarterback.
Chad, coming up, we will get to your story real quick. Monday Night Football.
You're really you're stressing me out with the time here. I've got to get through all of this. It's not just one thing in this story, so we got to get to it at some point.
Oh, you need the floor.
Well, I don't need the floor, but I need some time, is all I'm saying. I thought we were doing it this segment. So
no, I said final segment. And the proposal.
If we're going to do it next segment, we need to break right now for me to get to all of it.
Okay. We'll do it right now.
Trust me, it's going to be worth it.
Take the Patriots tonight. It's a pretty easy bet. The Cardinals are in it for a top 5 pick. Meanwhile, the Patriots are very much 500, back and forth. We'll be back with Chad Story. He'll need the time to explain what was an altercation. An altercation at a second grade girls basketball game.
It was unprecedented in a youth sporting event from what I've seen that took place on the opposite sideline and almost forced me to get my hands a little bit dirty. I'll explain.
That's next on OutKick 360.
2 teams went out. One was actually a team from the unit that I now play on TV that was attached to us. They went out. They went on the front side, or went around to go to the front side of this other house, and my team was basically going towards the back side of the house. So very shortly, what happened was it was the wrong house, and when we hit that one house, the actual house it was, which was next door, which is not exactly next door because Sutter City is kind of weird of how it's built. But, you know, they heard us. They were getting ready, prepping, you know, their gear, you know, and so they were ready to go. So when that team came around, a bunch of dudes opened up out of the front, what I assume would be the living room, with AKs and shot. I think they shot 3. If I'm not mistaken, they shot 3 of the members of that team. 2 of them were pretty much out of the fight at that point. But they were, I mean, it was heavy. I wasn't on that side of the house, but just hearing it, I was like, oh man, that's extreme. So I ran into the back door, which came into the kitchen, cleared through there, went in the hallway, and those same guys, as we approached that room, shot through the walls of that hallway, shot the guy literally right next to me. So then we backed off, and then we were and I'd have to draw it out, but we were in a tactical position that was just there wasn't a lot we could do. So we were trying to kind of figure out how to solve it. And the next thing I know, I remember just the whole room, or actually it wasn't really a room, it was the hallway, you know, so it was more like a tube straight at me, and just everything exploded. And I actually remember hitting the ground and looking up down the hallway. I was just confused. I didn't know what had happened. And I can say, you know, getting shot at, okay. It's one thing, but the explosion made me feel small. It was like a superhero just grabbed me and was like, or it was like the Hulk grabbed me and was like, it felt like a supernatural power. And it blew, so it was a nighttime hit. It blew my nods and my nod mount off my face. So I went from, you know, under nods to not being able to see anything. it obviously, my arm, I thought it blew off. I'm trying to think of what else it wrecked, but it wrecked several things. But and everything was pitch black for me, and I really didn't know what was going on. I just felt my arm was blown off, so I got up and walked outside to the back, and there was a wall that we had hopped to get in. That wasn't happening, so I just put my back against the wall and tried to take care of myself. But I never lost consciousness. The only time actually I did lose consciousness is when, and I still to this day don't know how they got me over that wall. I have no idea. But other than that, probably 5 minutes that they got me over the wall, I never lost consciousness.
Over the weekend, Saturday at, well, around noon, 12:23 local time. From Chad Withrow, the text reads, there was a coaching altercation in my basketball game this morning. Let's add it to the rundown. I have not asked a question about this all weekend. I hearted it. I love receiving texts like that. Chad, I cannot wait to hear the story. And again, I said earlier in the show, I would have put money down that you were not involved whatsoever. I thought you witnessed it and witnessed it only, and I cannot wait to hear the details of this.
I can tell Matty Ice is excited to hear this story in studio right now. I don't know if anyone else is, but I know Matty is because he's my guy. Thank you, Matty. I could see your excitement on your face. So here's the deal. I did not want to be involved in this altercation, but eventually, a man can only take so much, and you reach your snapping point and you say something. You see something, you say something.
Like me on the flight to Vegas that one day.
It's a very similar situation where I finally had to speak up and say something. So here's what happened. We're playing. It's a 6 and 7, first and second grade. Not really 6 and 7, just first and second grade girls basketball game. I am the assistant coach for my daughter's team. We have 10 players on our team. We played a team with 5 players. Now, I took one step into this gym and saw on the other sideline one of the girls playing. She also played in our softball league. She's a terrific athlete. So my immediate thought was the scouting report that I heard from my buddy who coached the other team at this school is off because this team's going to be really good. Because I know this girl is a great athlete.
I love the scouting
and
reports.
I saw some other player. I'm like, this team's going to be a challenge. Well, very early in the game, I realized the other team is better, right? I mean, there's no – look, you're going to lose in youth sports. I get it. I have no issue with it whatsoever.
It's a learning year.
I will cheer when another girl makes a free throw or a shot. I will say something nice to them, again, because it's first and second grade girls basketball, right? So we're down 8-0 after one quarter. And my daughter's one of their teams of 5. They play first and third, second, because we have so many players. So my daughter's team is out there first. I'm getting on to Evie so much because we didn't practice that week. We practiced that morning, just ball handling, passing, but she's not being aggressive like she normally is. And there's moments where she's got her hands on the ball and then just backs away from it when the other girl has it, and the girl will shoot it up. So I'm on her harder than normal. So we get to the end of the first quarter. My daughter's crying. Because I've yelled at her too much, and I'm trying to get her attention during the game. So I don't feel great about that. So she has to sit in the second quarter. I say, Evie, sit here. Let's talk for a minute. And I talk to her. I say, you're fine. I know that you're trying. I just don't know why you're not playing aggressive like normal. So when you get back out there, just go get the ball. It's very simple. When the ball's there, go get the rebound. If it's on offense or defense, just go after the ball. Okay, so that's kind of the setup to it. So second quarter gets there. And
she's very coachable.
It's an 8-0 game going into the second quarter. I think we score to make it 8-2. At this point, maybe it's like 8-2 or 10-2. So it's first and second grade basketball. Every girl travels when they get the ball. It's one point or another. No one's perfect with this. There's a lot of double dribbles. These high school boys that are reffing the games aren't going to call every travel, nor would I ever want them to call every travel. Nor, and I'll raise my hand when I say, have I ever yelled walk, double dribble, travel on the opponent to the official because I know they're not going to call it on our team either.
It's like the NBA.
It's thank you. Exactly like the NBA, Hutton. So it's something that I just allow to go, right? Like most, sane coaches would. Well, the ball's on the other end of the court, and our girl, one of our post players, gets the ball, and there's a girl below her. So instead of dribbling it, she starts to kind of shuffle her feet, arms over her head with the ball around the girl to get in position to shoot it, and then she shoots it. Well, as this is happening, she's clearly traveling with it, but there's no call, right, which we understand. The mom who's coaching the other team storms the court.
This is...
I'm talking stops the game, has her hands above her head, gesturing what our girl is doing, yelling at the ref, saying, what is going on? This is what she's doing. This is what she's doing. So to the high school boys' credit,
where is she on the court?
She's in the play. They have to blow the play. I mean, she's next to the little kids. She walks out onto the court, fully onto the court, not 2 steps on, walks in to inadvertently stop the game.
Yeah, she's like the protester
and stop
in Minnesota.
the game saying that's a travel, it should be our ball, yelling at the ref.
It's a Timberwolves game.
So
this is the NBA.
The kid that's reffing, blows the whistle, says, whoa, 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 whoa. They're immediately like, hey, no, go back, calm down. So our coach, I decided to stay quiet. Now, we could have escalated the situation.
Is this on your end?
On the opposite end.
Okay.
So I'm on one end. I'm on the end of the bench. Our coach is here, looking to our left down the other end. So our coach is just saying, "What? Hey, come on." And he kind of, and our coach is very calm, super nice guy. Says first and second grade basketball. Chill out. Trying to calm the mom down, right? Who's going crazy.
It's 8-2.
They're winning. They're going to win the game.
Right,
I don't understand what's happening in her brain when this happens, right? Full meltdown. Stops the game. So this happens. We could have escalated. I could have demanded a technical. We could have gone out there yelling at the ref to throw her out of the game. All this, right? So this happens. We calm down, get to the half. Now, during the second quarter also, my coach looks at me and says, the male assistant coach keeps mouthing at me. Says he keeps saying something to me. He's talking the whole time, yelling at our bench. I'm thinking, what in the world is going on? So we get to half, okay? And at halftime, the male assistant coach walks one of his 5 players over who's crying and says, hey, coach, one of your girls pinched my girl. Pinch one of our players. And I said, well, we're not about that, so do you know? And I bend down to the girl and I say, honey, do you know what number, who pinched you? And I will talk to her about it. Does not know the number. Now, I immediately had an accusation of who I thought on our team would have done this.
Okay.
Someone that's displayed a temper before, okay? They're first and second graders. It happens. And she was complaining about getting smacked a lot in the game, so I thought she may have retaliated. So the girl says, no, I didn't pinch anybody. She says, but they are smacking me. And I said, okay. So I tell the coach, I said, I'm sorry that happened. We'll deal with it. All right? Could have said a lot worse because it's a very awkward situation that I'm being marched a tiny, human
We will
over
make note of this.
and saying, one of your girls pinched our girl. They, okay. So then this happens, and I go out to the refs because our coach is talking to them about what happened, and I tell the ref, I said, hey, if that happens again, throw her you-know-what out of the game, and I will help you make sure she's out of here. I said, don't hesitate. So the kid laughs. It's like, I'm not joking. She can't walk onto the court. So at this point, the woman starts walking over
she heard you.
and talking to the refs, not talking to me, and says, hey, we got to – and I said, since now I'm starting to build up, as you can tell right now as I'm building up. I say, hey, since we're making suggestions, don't ever do that again. What you just did on the court, don't do that. Just don't. If you think about it, don't do it. Ever. That is a terrible example for all these kids. So she kind of plays this, well, it's my first year coaching. I don't know. And I said, your daughter is way too good to play ignorant. Like, I know which one your kid is, and she's not going home not doing anything. She's not being raised by someone who doesn't know the game. You know better than that. Don't do it. So we get in the second half. All right, we break away. She, to her credit, didn't really have much to say about it. Kind of said something to the rep about being a first year, then backed away. Second half starts. My daughter goes over the back on someone trying to reach the ball.
Being
Clear
aggressive.
foul. So I get up and I'm like, Evie, I told you to go for the ball, and she gets 4 fouls in the game, by the way. You can't reach over her back. Didn't hurt anyone. They blew the whistle quick. So as I'm talking to our player, my daughter, the male coach is staring me down and mouthing at me. So I go to the scores table and I said, would you like to say something to me? And the guy kind of looks away and then looks back, and I said, say it to me if you've got an issue. And I said, I am talking to my daughter about not doing that. You coach your players. I will coach my players. This is when I go and sit down, take multiple deep breaths on the end of the bench, and just try not to look at their bench the rest of the game. Game ends, I think we lose like 14-6 in this game or something.
Did you shake their hand?
And I'm thinking, well, of course I'm going to go shake their hands, but I'm also preparing, Hutton, similar to you on the plane.
Yeah.
Like, this guy might say something, and I'm going to have to not fight him in front of all these kids and parents. Now, cooler heads prevailed. We all shook hands, said, good job, coach, good game, good game. Quickly, went through the handshake line, got out of there. But I have never seen in a youth sporting event, especially that age, someone stop the game by walking into the middle of the play the way that happened in that game. And this set off a chain of events that started with some mouthing. And I don't know I assume this person maybe knew who I was, listens to the show, and didn't like me coming in, so kept saying things to our bench. But look, not a great moment, but I'm happy that nothing bad happened because I had to take a lot of deep breaths.
We got the umpire in studio. Can we get this dude in studio? The male coach?
If he would like to reach out and come in studio.
You guys can just stare at each other
I
the
would
entire
love
show?
for him or the mom that stopped the game by running onto the court to come in studio and explain themselves as to how they thought that was a good idea. And maybe they'll admit I got carried away.
I said, Chad coaching youth league softball is one thing, but on the hardwood, it's game time. This guy, you're welcome at any time, but he'll get up and join you on Tuesday, apparently.
Ready to bang some hats.